Welcome back, everyone, to your weekly Merge Conflict. I am one of your co-hosts, James Montemagno, and with me, as always, is Mr.
Frank Kruger, the other co-host, I guess. We haven't found a third. We've been doing it for 10 or 15 years. Maybe in 30 years we'll find a third co-host.
You never know. You never know. Where am I going to put? I'm going to put you over here. I'm going to put this webcam over here so I can look at you.
This is good podcasting. If you are tuned into the YouTube, we can see a very close-up zoom in of James's hand. It's good entertainment here.
How's that? That's my torso. That's not correct. I have this. So the thing, Frank, is that okay. The microphone comes from here, so I need to really just be like here with that. I don't know how you have it set up. Anyways, where is your
YouTube look? You're supposed to have it right on your lips for the YouTube look. Mine, I slowly just hide it away.
Wow. What people didn't realize is that Frank intentionally hides his microphone, which makes him sound way worse than actually if it was way closer to his face.
Hi, everyone. I will let you hear all the mouth noises now.
Oh, it's so good. Thank you. Because if I go like this, right, then it's really far away, right?
Yeah, but then we get to hear all the room echo sounds from you. I'm sure this is what everyone tunes in for, is this week in microphone technique.
Oh, that one's really good. I like that position a little bit better. You're not super echoey. You have a pretty good room. I think this room is a little echoey, and upstairs is pretty echoey. Anyways, it is Nintendo Switch 2 week.
Ooh, you know what? I won some trivia thanks to you.
What?
Yep. At trivia this week. Don't be creepy. I won't tell you where I do trivia. There was a question: how much does the new Mario Kart cost on the Switch 2? And thanks to this podcast, thanks to the wonderful Nintendo news that we bring everyone, I knew the answer. It's a glorious $80, $79.99. That's about the extent of my Switch 2 knowledge. I think we had a debate on it, but I just wanted to let you know we lost trivia, but we got that question right.
Hey, as long as you got one, you can kind of come in with that clutch trivia question, and that's what you need. There was a trivia question last time I did trivia, which was like, what is the electrolyte filled energy drink or electrolyte filled drink from
Blando. Blando is a from Idiocracy.
From Idiocracy. No, it's not.
Isn't it like
close?
Grando, Flando, something O, isn't it?
It's Brondo.
Brando. Same difference.
Brando. It's got electrolytes. Yeah. It's what plants crave. I did get that one correct, and everyone's like, what? And I was like, yeah. So sometimes when you come in with that clutch little knowledge drop, you're like, wow, that's great.
There was a whole video game round with 10 questions on video games, and I think we only got 2 of them right. I missed an Oblivion question. I love Oblivion. Did you know there's a re-release of Oblivion this week? That happened.
I didn't know. Did you know? Week? That's cool.
Recently, time dilation and all that. But sure. I gotta keep throwing the trivia at you. The new Grand Theft Auto, they're repeating a city. What is the city they're repeating?
Vice City.
You got it.
Really?
I was too silly and didn't go for the obvious answer. You gotta go for the obvious answer in trivia.
Yeah, I guess some people might have said San Andreas, but I feel like that was too recent. Yeah.
I did. I was the dummy that said it.
Well, I knew that the new one is a little bit more Vice City-esque looking feel kind of on it, but who knows if that game's ever going to come out. That's for sure. When's it going to come out? Nobody knows. It's a mystery. Only Rockstar knows.
Will it be on the Switch 2?
That's a great question. I assume, well, I mean, the Grand Theft Auto trilogy is there, so technically, and also like it depends. Like I could see that them doing it. CD Projekt Red is putting out Cyberpunk 2030 or 2077. And they just did a whole video on how, even though the Nintendo Switch is like a PlayStation 4 and like people were concerned because the PlayStation 4 didn't necessarily play Cyberpunk that great, they're like, oh no, we like retooled like the shade of this, and like there's a bunch of optimizations in the silicon. And the godfather of AI, Jensen Huang, today did a video with Nintendo about all the technology that they worked on and the partnership that they've had with Nintendo for so long and all the different things. So, anyways, I don't have one because it doesn't come out till Thursday, and this is Tuesday, Frank. So, spoiler alert, I don't have one. Although I am constantly refreshing my Walmart.com page, and I've not gotten shipping confirmation, although tomorrow would be the day because it's like they don't want to release it too early, right? Because they don't want it to, get to your house early. So they end up overnighting these things like to you. It's crazy.
Oh, funny. So it like sits in a warehouse so that what is there a review embargo and all that kind of stuff? No one's allowed to talk about it, or they just want everyone to get it at the same time. I don't know how to release a piece of hardware. It's too hard.
Everything that you just said. Yes. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
they don't want so like funnily enough, my local GameStop called me and they're like, hey, like we're gonna get a few extra if you want to come in. We're doing a 9 p.m. release because it releases at midnight Eastern time. So like
Mm.
technically, they want everyone to be able to play it at the same time. So very fascinating rollout of hardware. I've done many midnight release as well. But anyways, that's not what we're here to talk about. Frank, as you know, I used to create video games, and it's only taken 465 podcasts for you to even know anything about the game that I created. So, Frank, I'm an
Look,
open book. Ask me all about the software development cycle. Ask me all about the process. Anything that you want, Shred Nebula lives on in my heart.
okay, but first I got to clarify some things. I think of you, number one, as a printer software driver maker. Number
No.
two, as a media software maker person. And then only when you yell at me do I remember that you made video games. So I think that's the problem. It's just going to be you. Yeah, it's true. James used to make video games. I don't really listen to him enough to really keep that in my head. But you made probably maybe my second favorite genre of video game, which is the space action game. I love arcade style, like Gattaca, like I don't know. Give me something fake flying around with lots of missiles and guns and vaguely large objects to shoot. Star
TIE
Fox,
Fighter,
but TIE Fighter. Oh.
Rogue
Well,
Leader.
okay. This is where I want to be clarifying, though. I said action. So Space Fighter Simulator is my number one favorite genre. With throw in a little bit of trade, like piracy and stuff. That just ups it. See also Grand Theft Auto discussion. But the action ones are great too because sometimes you just don't really want to do all that other stuff. So number one, I just want to say good genre, man. did you sign on to the team because of the genre, or how did you? How does one become a game developer? Did you sign on to the company, the game? How did it happen?
I was going to UAT, the University of Advancing Technology, for video game development specifically,
Okay.
inside their software engineering sub program there to get my Bachelor of Science. There's like a Bachelor of Science in game development. Well, there's also I have a Bachelor of Science in software engineering. That's actually what I have. I guess I just have a Bachelor of Science, but it's like whatever your sub-specific major is, they give you something on your diploma that says that. I don't know. It's a for-profit school, so who knows what they care about. Anyways, so I was going there and at UAT, which is
Mm-hmm.
in Tempe, Arizona, and they specifically require you to intern somewhere. Now, this is a very small school, so it's not like my
Sure.
graduating class is very large, maybe a few hundred people. So they require you to intern somewhere, whether that be in person, virtual, hybrid, whatever it is. Now, in Arizona, in Phoenix, there are several large game development firms. There's some small ones, and there's also, and there were at the time at least, a lot of game testing ones as well. And of course, there's people there that are doing cybersecurity. There's people that are doing art programs, level design, games. So there's a whole bunch of things. It's not just like, 200 game engineers need to find an internship at the same time. That's not how it works. But you're required to intern somewhere doing something in your field. And I hadn't really thought about it, Frank, to be honest with you. I was grinding away, working 45 hours a week, 50 hours a week at GameStop. I was doing my college and cycling and doing stuff and hanging out. And one day I was working, and James Goddard, who was the owner of Crunch Time Games, now works at Microsoft and Xbox team. in the coalition. I think he's still at the coalition. And he walked in, is like, hey, do you have this game or whatever? We started talking. I was like, are you go to UAT? I'm like, he's like, oh, I run this game studio. I was like, oh, I'm looking for an internship. He's like, oh, come swing by. It
You
just really just happened like that, to
love
be
it.
honest with you.
So you didn't know anything about the game. You basically needed an internship, and you got lucky, sir. You were lucky that you got my second favorite genre of video game.
I made a few $100 a week to cover my gas to drive very far away from my where I lived as well, out to Queen Creek. And I Ben Rees, who I've interviewed on our podcast before for the board game that he made, but he was our lead designer. Our buddy Chris Rakowski, he works at Rockstar now. He worked on Red Dead Redemption, and now on I think on the GTA series. Speaking of that, and then he worked on the Zombie Logic. That was a pretty cool move.
Oh, cool.
I remember him telling me. So, anyways, we all worked there with a few other people, and we were maybe like I don't know, 8 total maybe. And James's claim was he worked on like the Street Fighter balancing engine and Street Fighter 2 Championship Edition, things like that. And he also like created one of the characters as well. So he's kind of known in like the fighting and the fighting scene. And like the studio was really set up where everyone was really into Street Fighter and like 2D fighters and things.
Oh.
And the whole concept that they had was that, but in space, basically. Imagine if you could have unique spacecraft with unique capabilities and special upgrades and things, and you're dog fighting with these different capabilities. That would be the multiplayer. And then obviously the single player, we would have some aspect of that, but also space exploration. That was one of the big things, is exploring, trying to find like these different ships that revealed story arc, reconstructing and figure out your ship that had been destroyed basically, and or your bigger vessel, that was carrying the stuff that would come and do stuff. That was the game. And I always enjoyed anything like that multiplayer, so I was always hooked by games like that. And someone that's huge into Star Wars, space things always intrigued me as well, and I always liked all those Star Wars games that we just mentioned. And yeah, it didn't take much because I needed an internship to get me working there, but that's why I was there working on it. Yeah.
All right, but let's take this step by step. So you are a programmer going to school. You've got a required internship, but you get hooked up with this pretty good deal, in my opinion. Yep. What is it? Okay, so you have released the source code to one of your games before, and we got to make fun of it a little bit on the podcast here. How did you feel as a programmer at that point? Like, did you go into that office thinking, I'm top dog, I can program anything, I'm good to go? Or were you just like, I need to find someone and get them coffee because I have a lot of learning to do and I just need to talk to people? What's it like walking into that game studio on day one?
Yeah, I would say somewhere in between, because at this time I was fairly progressed. Like I was, in my senior year. So I'd worked on a lot of game mods. I had worked on several different game clones of, Galaga and things like that out there.
Neat.
And I think because I'd worked on some Warcraft 3 mods and worked in that space, I had some familiarity there. And I worked on a lot of programming languages. And I think when I sat down and understood their setup and what they were doing, even when I toured ahead of time, I felt a little comfortable because they were all using C++, which I was very familiar with. I've been doing a lot of C++, even though I was more of a C# developer at that time, creeping in. Knew a lot of C++, and they were all using Visual Studio. So they were all using Visual Studio. So I'm like, okay, this is an environment that I really enjoy working in. They're all on Windows machines. I felt very comfortable with it. And we were developing for Xbox, which was my preferred machine. So like I understood DirectX, and I kind of understood the ethos of what it was. And this was before XNA as well. So before that time came out, this Xbox 360, Chris was specifically making the game engine, the rack engine. So we built our own engine from scratch. So it was kind of one of those things where I think a lot of people are doing things for the first time. So they were a little bit like, I don't know. And Brandon, made the level editor. So I felt okay. I didn't feel great, but I felt okay. And I would say, like, inviting wise, some people were very inviting, and then some people you could tell at least thought that they were top dog. And that, I think they kind of, that wasn't a great vibe, but I vibed with the people I needed to vibe with.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I was interrupting you because I want to take it step by step on the status of the game because I find game development fascinating. I've avoided it in my career because I think it's a big time sink because it is. There's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah.
And a few things that I know. I read an article from Miyamoto. Who did Mario? You would know this.
Miyamoto-san. Mm-hmm.
Miyamoto-san. So Miyamoto-san said something very fascinating that's always stuck with me is you start with the feel of the game. What does it feel like to move the character? And then once you get the feel of the character done and the actions they can take and, bouncing on mushrooms and all that kind of stuff, then you work on the graphics. I'm curious, what state was the game in when you came? Were they still fleshing out the feel of the game? I mean, you mentioned the Street Fighter overall feel they wanted to go for, but were they still figuring out like those mechanics? Because I'm reading the reviews of this game and they're saying everyone seems to like the feel, the tight action, just the way everything is tuned. So were they at that stage or were they in the fun make explosions pretty phase?
No, we weren't. We were in the pre-fun explosion, pre-level set. I believe for the first, if I remember, at least the first 6 months, I believe we were all just flying around the square that had like
yeah, great.
My first job was to work on toxic clouds and create the shaders for them. So my first job was to create shaders, which is not fun, which we've talked about in the past.
Graphics though, that's fun.
Graphics.
No? Yeah.
No, yeah, totally. And at that point, Chris and others were working on the engine that was going to handle all the physics and all the things like that inside of it. So for the majority of the time, we were working with more of the very staticky ship that was flying around and maneuvering around and getting sort of the core building blocks in. But it progressed pretty fast. So we were kind of at the later stages of those. The things that I ended up working on were a lot of tooling, a lot of WinForms applications to actually make things pretty, put in graphics, do a lot of things we've talked about in the pod. But at this stage, we weren't at the fun stage yet. We were at the it's going to be fun soon stage, I would say, 'cause I think I worked there for like a year and a half or so. So it took us quite a bit of time. Yeah.
Well, it's funny you should mention the editors because that's actually how I got into game development. We wrote the mod editors, a little programming group online. And that's where I learned, I don't know, I'll make up a number. 80% of game development is working on the editor and organizing all the data, the map editor, the mission editor, all the stuff you don't really think about when you're making a game. You think about coding all the explosions. So that's interesting. Did you work? Okay, number one, do you agree with that random 80% number I just said? And number two, did you work on the tools? Did you enjoy working on the tools, or would you have preferred working on the game engine?
No, I was definitely one level up on like the tools. There were several things that I worked on in the game engine itself. I did work specifically on the shield and reflection logic of bullets and parrying. I worked on the physics of like the sliding, like once the main engine was tuning that. And then I also worked a lot on like the shield, which you could like point, you could like do full around or you could point the shield in specific directions to parry bullets back. I worked on a lot of that logic that was there. The thing that James wanted was everything to be configurable because he was a scripter. So he wanted everything basically in like an Excel file, like a CSV.
Yeah.
So every ounce of anything that you could imagine, every variable he wanted to be able to tweak and tune because that was his specialty, was the fine tuning. So when you think of if you think of actually a fighting game, every single thing about that is how far they jump, how high they jump, how this, and like their maneuver, and like all the timing, like how long does it take to turn your ship around or turn this thing, or how long does it take for that shield to like maneuver? What's the speed? What's the slowdown pace? What's this? So everything was super configurable. So we spent a lot of time making sure that those tools and those integrations into the game were scriptable, could be compiled in. So the game balancers and designers could finely tune it without having to know anything about the engine, right? The whole idea is that they don't want to be in the code. They want to be in a file, manipulate a file at hot reloads. And now all their changes are happening. So we spent a lot of time on that, getting that to work. I would say the amount of time on tools, I think for the first 6 or 7 months, I grinded on code in the engine. And then the last 6 or 7 months I spent on tool development. and specifically around particle effects and visualizations for our
Mm-hmm.
designers and balancers. So the hard part is once we started to add a whole bunch of once we got like a lot of the shader logic in, but also once we got a lot of the um like physical world pieces, space pieces, the design team ran into the problem of that from the time that they had something in their mind to get it into the game was a long time just to visualize it. So they were like in Photoshop or Illustrator creating all the artwork and all the 3D models or whatever. And they needed a way to visualize and see what it would look in the engine without being in the engine. So they wanted to be able to do the same thing. Like they're like, okay, like this explosion. How long is this explosion? How big is this explosion? What are the variables? What are the decay rate? So I built a bunch of tools to basically open up any images, overlaying, adding things into a scene. Basically think of a scene creator in OBS where you're layering things. You'd have a 3-dimensional .x file, DirectX file, and then you would layer on different particles and particle effects and things. So I worked a lot on that. Like, what's the rotation? What's the speed? What's it doing? XYZ. And then I would import that into the game. So I wrote like a C++ exporter from that tool so I could I would save it to XML or whatever, and I would import that into C++ into the game engine once it was good. Kind of have a sync layer there, which was really nice, back and forth. So that was one of the main things that I did in the game for a long time. And then, yeah, the last like 3 months are just like fixing bugs. I mean, and then I left, and then they spent another 6 months fixing bugs and getting through certification for Xbox.
So you did actually already answer this question, but I want to circle back to it because I just find it fascinating. It's the hot reload of all those Excel sheets or parameter modifications and all that for what you called the balancers, or I think it was the tuners and all that. Because I think that's the hardest part of a game. Like writing the engine's kind of fun, roughing out a map is kind of fun and easy. The hard part is balancing the game and making it playable for all skill levels and then making it engaging for all skill levels. I think that's really hard. And so my question was going to be, did you have any kind of hot reload, or did you make these poor people suffer through a compile loop? You said you have a hot reload, but can you describe, like, in practice, what did that physically mean? Are they using like a dual monitor setup? They have literally Excel files open over here and an Xbox 360 over here. What was the actual physical setup there?
I mean, from my recollection, we'd actually need Chris on to probably actually tell us the logistics of how the game engine worked. But I think, yes, I think we booted into a debug build that was connected. So you would debug from like Visual Studio into the Xbox. If I remember, I don't know if it was a script or if it was a direct debug command, but that would basically dev kit box. We had Xbox dev kits, right? And you would debug it. So you were in it. So basically we'd set it up so they could just open the project and solution, hit go, and then there were a bunch of files in there. And I believe how we programmed it for hot reloading was like a certain key command. So basically, we're looking for in debug mode only, looking for a special input mechanism either on the keyboard or on, because you could have keyboard input too, or on the control pad. And then that would trigger a, hey, reload these items. And then I believe it was a different keystroke to like reload the items and restart the level type of thing, because you want to like restart it from scratch. So that was the hot reload of the time, was pause, run a command that reloads everything, go to town, basically.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I won't make you dive into that technology then. It's too hard to remember. This is what, 2008 or something? We should give some context. But I always find that
2007. Yeah, 2007, and it was released in 2008. Yeah, so 2006, 2007. Mm-hmm.
I find it's tricky. Like, as a C++ programmer, don't you kind of want to put the logic into C++? And you're like, oh, it's not the greatest language for scripting and all that. So did you have a scripting language in addition to that, like a full-blown scripting language? Or did you just have a bunch of C++ code that knew how to load your XML files or whatever the heck?
I believe, from recollection, this is, 17 years ago. The recollection I had was that there was kind of a multi-step process, which was like you save something in the Excel, which is then stored. And then I think there was like a converter script in Excel that like export into a special format that was easily read by the C++, whether that be CSV or something else. Basically, it was like a parser that would like,
Yeah.
because the whole goal that James had was, I want to open an Excel. I don't want to see all the headers. I want to see all the variables. I want to have like, here's all my Excel files. I don't know if it was, I think it was just a single book for each character and each player, but hey, I'm going to work on the Marauder, which is one of the ships, right? I'm going to do that. And like, now here I am, right? So you'd have that monitor up. Or as you're working on two, you'd kind of split screen the two XML or Excel files side by side. And that was the scripting markup that was there. Now, that being said, I'm pretty sure that they were stored in like just our own fancy sort of, single file that we could just read.
Yeah.
That then got shipped into the app, right? Because which you don't want to ship Excel files. You would just want to compile it into the engine. Not that it matters, but it was like one step removed of, you don't want to have to read Excel. You just want to read a file basically and parse out the format. So
Yeah, hardware used to be slow.
yeah.
Nowadays, you can just whatever spin up
Doesn't
a whole
matter.
Python process to parse gigabytes
Exactly.
of JSON file or whatever.
Exactly.
So you said you were doing bug fixing there toward the end, and then there was about roughly 6 months of more bug fixing. Can you remember any of the bugs? I love game bugs because they're always so silly. They're just like, the player popped in on the side of the screen or opponents were too easy. Do you happen to remember any? Were any trivial and fun? Were any hair pullingly maddening?
You got a good game tester when you basically hate your game tester.
Good. Okay, you had them. Okay.
Yeah, it was, our game tester was, I don't want to say his name was Matt. It was very good. I spent all the time doing it. And we would play the game ourselves, so we'd find our own bugs. To be honest with you, I would say the two biggest things that we really had were collision. It was just a lot of collision and escape.
Collision.
It's always collision, bounding boxes, and escaping the world and running into stuff and getting stuck in between geometry. And to really fix those,
have it.
the easiest way to fix that, by the way, is like not to fix anything with the engine. It's just to change the boxes on the what's there. Oh, they keep getting stuck here. I'll just put another box there in between, and then they won't get stuck there, right? So that's like one way of doing it. That's the biggest thing, like everywhere in the game. That was really one of the biggest issues. The second biggest issue that we really ran into was not so much. There was a whole slew of issues with the multiplayer connection. Like, that was not me. I didn't have anything to do with that. I think the Microsoft team helped out a lot, and they had like a whole bunch of customization and logic that worked with Xbox Live Arcade. But I think that was a whole other slew of issues. But in the game itself, the actual biggest issue, which was some of the code that I worked on, was the I don't want to say scripting because we said scripting a lot, but it's the single player like trigger points throughout the level and timing. So for example, in the beginning level, you would have these gates that would open when you trigger certain logic. So you'd have all these different things, but the player can manipulate stuff, right? So you have to have all these, they're clever. And if you have a good tester, they do that. So we had all these issues with it, which like, okay, the ship can fly this much and you have the turbo boost, but if you do this, then like the player could get like through the gates even before triggering all this other stuff, which then breaks the entire game. You know what I mean? Like, if the player gets over there before they do this other thing and scan this thing, then nothing else works in the entire game, basically, which is like absolutely bananas type of thing. So those are really the biggest hindrance, especially after I got the shaders to work. But besides that, like, those were the biggest things, was like collision, and then just like the rollout of the stages to complete a level. So the checkpoints to get that stuff into the game. That was pretty good. I mean, I think once we had all of the particle effects and explosions and the HUD system up, I worked on the scoring system a lot. Mm-hmm. That all stuff was pretty good because I think the engine handled it. But the things that it's like the engine is handling it correct, but it is the logistics of level design and object layout and these tweaks of how those bounding boxes and things actually interact. So that's the hardest part. And then we did do a lot of tweaking to the enemy AI. That was really hard because you want the enemy AI in this world to be kind of doing their own thing, but then also know when you're there, but also not that smart. So that was a really hard challenge um, for us. I remember for a long time because you only are able to zoom out so far for multiple reasons, which means like, how do you see the enemies and how do they see you? And how do you make it so all the enemies aren't just coming at you off screen and make that feel organic, So it's definitely a challenge.
Is that a lot of if statements? Is that the enemy AI?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
just
lot of if statements. Yeah, a
okay.
lot of
Let's
that.
fast forward a little bit. So you said roughly 6 months more to finish the game. Where are you physically now? Are you writing printer drivers when this game comes out? What are you doing when this game comes out?
Yeah, when I left, so I graduated, and I worked for a few more months, and at that point the game was winding down, which means like there's attrition at that point, right? You don't need everyone on to finish a lot of the core stuff. So at that point, I didn't know if the game was ever going to be released,
Mm.
to be honest with you, or like where it was going to be at. And we are pretty far along. So I obviously checked in with the team. But when I graduated, I um, one needed a full time job, and I think the studio, because the project was winding down and the game hadn't been released. So it's kind of any big project is like, is it going to be successful? Are we going to do another game? Are we going to like fund this? Are we going to do expansion packs? Or what's going to go on? How many people will we need? So at that point, it didn't make any sense to have me on, even though I was kind of intern salary. But I also needed a real paying full-time job, right? So that was the biggest
Yeah.
thing, no matter where the game state was, is that like at this point, I'm no longer in college. I need to pay, my apartment and all my other bills that are going to be coming up in general. And I was still working at GameStop. So I worked at GameStop and at the game studio at the same time and went to school at the same time. So I did all those. So it was like a lot of like 100-hour weeks, 120-hour weeks um, for that year, which was intense. So I worked a little bit more at GameStop, but then I started interviewing at game studios. So I interviewed at a few game studios. I interviewed at Riot, Legal Engines people. That didn't go great. And then the thing is, what I thought at the end of it was, I built all these desktop apps, a lot of WinForms apps, and I'd built some of those at college. And I really fallen in love with desktop development. So I brought in my search. So I was like, you know what? What if I don't work at a game studio? What if I work at just anyone that does software? And the funny part is that I actually changed my major from software engineering and game development to just bachelor of science in game programming to bachelor of science software engineering. So because WinForms. So what ended up happening is kind of in that last year when I was doing a lot of WinForms development, I was like, I think I really like this, even if it is doing game development. I love game development, but I think that my power is in more broad software engineering that could apply to multiple things instead of like just, game development. There's a lot of crossover, but it's just specialty on what classes you take and things you do. So I changed my sub major to that basically, which was very minimal change as far as like course. It was just kind of like final project and stuff. But what that meant is that I was able to look around. So at that time, I used dice.com, which was like the monster. There was a lot of monster.com, and Dice was like the techie thing. So that is when I got my first non-game interview at OSE, which is now Canon, writing printer software, not printer drivers. Thank you very much.
I just like calling drivers.
So we did create a lot of printer drivers, but it wasn't me. So we did printer workflow management software, and that company specifically had a huge WinForms app that had just migrated to 3.5 at the time, or 3.0, 3.0, maybe moving to 3.5. I started the 3.5 migration and to 64-bit migration too. And it was really big printer desktop software. It was all WinForms. And I was like, this is right up my alley because I not only love this, but I obviously love printers. So this is right up my alley. So it was a job that had a really good salary for Phoenix at the time. This is 2008, the February, March of 2008. And which other things were happening in 2008, if you remember?
A little housing crisis, too big to fail, a few of those little things.
I snuck right in right before that all happened.
Good for you.
Got real lucky. So, because I graduated in December of 2007, so a lot of people graduated the spring of 2008, and
Mm.
that's when things happened. So we had impact at Canon, but everything was fine for a while. So, anyways, I interviewed there, and I got the job as a junior developer and started writing a whole bunch of WinForms code and Silverlight code and a whole bunch of other cool stuff as well. So it was great. Yeah, I loved it. It
Okay.
was fantastic. And then the game released. The game actually did
Hey,
release, and the thing happened.
hang on, hang on. Okay, that's exactly where we're gonna go next. But I want to set the stage because you've gotten a perspective now. You got a really jobby job. You're worrying about paying bills. You want some real monies. So I'm sure you're a little bit checked out of it all. But you know, it's your first game you worked on. So were you following its release very closely? Were you keeping emails up? You're like, hey, when this being published? And 2008 is a tricky time because let me just ask my question. Did it come out in a box or not? Do you have a box or not?
Uh,
That's what I want to know.
I had gotten the job at OSE in the beginning of the year. The game did not release until September of 2008, so it was quite
Okay.
far into the year. Now, if you remember, the game was exclusive to Xbox and the 360, and specifically to the Xbox Live Arcade service, which launched that year, which was a digital download service from Microsoft. I think we launched it for, I think you were still buying things in Gamer Points or something, but it was like $10 basically that was there. So no physical box, no
Dang.
physical swag, just a T-shirt for Crunch Time Games, and then we released it from it. So yep, that's how we did it.
Okay, so did you blast through the game so you could get to the credit screen? Did you know how to get to the credit screen? How much effort did you put into trying to find your name within this game?
Well, good thing that I programmed most of the credit screen, I think, along with Brandon.
You knew how it worked. Okay.
It was readily available to you at any time in the about
Okay.
section. I think we had a special credits scene after you beat everything. No, I played everything. So there was a big online component and then the single player. So I played through all of it once it was out, and then we had online leaderboards and things like that as well. So we tried to be at the top for a while because it was really big into Xbox Live at the time.
Yeah, let me jump to that real quick. Were you any good at the game? Like, as a developer, it doesn't mean you're going to be good at it. Like, just because you know the mechanics and everything doesn't mean you're going to be as, like, gamers are awesome at what they do. Were you impressed with the multiplayer gamers out there, the people you didn't know? Or were you and the team able to hold your own for a little bit?
Yeah, I think that's the advantage that we had was that there was like a bunch of different ships, like 8 ships that you could pick from, like different fighters basically, and they all their own unique capabilities. So for us, at least for quite a long time in the beginning, it was mostly just us learning, other people learning the ships, and then we had already known the ships, right? So we had been playing with the ships forever. So in that
Yeah.
regard, it's like, oh no, like, we already completely, you know, had no problem destroying people for the longest time. But also at the same time, we also didn't want to like, you don't want to like just go and destroy everyone. You know what I mean? The entire time, you
You could have,
want to,
though.
but also you could have, yes, and we did for a
Okay.
bit. So, but how the Xbox Live ranking system, how it pairs you up with players, is based on the scoring mechanism.
Right.
So you are paired against not always the top players, but you are kind of like in this leveling up system that's there. So yeah, I think I have all the gamer points for it, if I remember. And then I think I even we had like a little icon pack that you could buy for like $1. So I even bought that. So, but yeah, and now it's available. It's out there. Um,
I'm
not
looking at
just
the Yeah, sorry, I'm looking at the Xbox.com website for Shred Nebula, and it says it's available on the Xbox One and the Xbox Series X Bar S, whatever that is.
X. Yeah,
Have you played it on an Xbox One or an X Bar S?
I have played it on, yes, both my Xbox One and then my Xbox Series S that I had for the longest time. And yeah, look, I don't know exactly how the technology works for the backwards compatibility bit, but I was talking to James about it. And, all these things are based on Hyper-V and all these other things. So my assumption, I don't know the logistics, is I think it's, a special image of it like emulating the system or something. I'm not really
I
positive.
see.
That's my only assumption. So when I talked to James, I don't think they really did any work. I think they had to go find a special, like a build, or maybe they did have to cut a build or something, but I I can't imagine they did anything special. But it's out there now. It's $4.99. So I don't know. I don't know how it is, but it's there. You can totally buy it. I don't know if the multiplayer still works. I assume, but
Oh,
uh,
yeah, that's a good
assume it
question.
does. Is there anyone playing it? Probably not.
It's got 3 very positive reviews. I think someone's playing it. You got a bunch
Uh,
of 5-star reviews.
I don't think. I mean, I don't. The game didn't do fantastic. So
Okay, so
I mean, and the Metacritic is 66. So I think it was the thing that I learned about game development and game design was that I learned a lot about game testing with users and user research actually. And I think that what we didn't have at the game studio was someone that did that. We did it ourselves, and the game designers and balancers and engineers, we brought people in to test it. And the problem that we had was we built it, so we knew how to use it. And I've done this before, like in software engineering, is like instead of just letting your users use it and figure it out and just watching them, the natural thing to do is to explain it to them. So instead of figuring out why they're struggling with this or what they're doing is or what they're and asking them probing questions, it was no, this is how you do this. Oh, this is how you do this. So you train them. So the problem is you don't fix the core problem, which is some of the logistics of the UI or the scheme of the controller, for example. So I think those are some of the things that maybe hindered it a bit. But I'm really proud of the game. I mean, it's the only game I've made. I have a game, to say that you made and shipped a pretty high quality end game for the Xbox 360, pre XNA, pre a lot of these things. I'm very proud of what the team built. And James and David as the designers and balancers on it, and then working with Chris and Brandon and one of my best friends, Ben, who was my officiant at our wedding. So
That's awesome. Okay, that's the connection.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just want to interject. I am the greatest game tester on the planet. I used to actually do this at Microsoft all the time because A, you got free software. B, I got to play a bunch of games that hadn't been released yet. And I was probably the greatest tester because I am terrible at games. I am the worst gamer you've ever seen. I remember I was playing some beta version of Halo, and I was like stuck in the tutorial level, like behind a tree. I just couldn't get around this tree. And so I totally appreciate what you're saying there. Like, yeah, you forget some people just don't know how to get around the tree, let alone like get into the balancing part of the game where they actually get to shoot the gun and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to put that out there. You should have hired me. Um, so that's a pretty good place. I think you vaguely covered it, but you said it's 66% on the Metacritic. Was there any feedback you fully agreed with, or any feedback that you just said, "Oh heck no, you just don't know how to play the game," or do you not read the criticism because criticism will break your soul?
All of it. Yeah. Probably all of it. I think everything was fairly accurate in general. I think that the 7 is a spectacular score. If that's your average is 7, it's really spectacular. We're not talking
Okay.
a 5 or a 4. Everyone looks at the scale very differently, right? You think it's a C, but actually like it's a 70. Like that's pretty
Passing.
fantastic. It's well, exactly. It's like the in school we're meant to think like something under 60% is a failing grade, right? But like actually that doesn't mean a lot. So I think overall, like a lot of the scores were very there, anywhere between like a 6 and an 8, and I think pretty solid overall. So I'm pretty happy with the game and what the team created, and I was able to come in obviously far after. I didn't have anything to do with the design or anything like that. They actually released like the entire like game design book somewhere, I think, which is really kind of cool. Some there somewhere.
That is,
But yeah.
I'm sorry, just that is really cool. Because I always came at games from being the editor guy. We figured out all the file formats. We wrote editors for games, and so I never took the plunge of actually designing a game again because I know how much work it is, and so
Yeah.
that's why I've never wanted to do it. But I think it'd be fun to see that I don't know, Bible, for lack of a better word,
Yeah,
for what the game is. I think a lot of people could learn from it who do want to take the plunge into making games.
totally.
So,
Yeah.
any closing thoughts? This has been kind of fun. We've never done like a deep dive on game developer James, we'll call him.
Game developer James. It's well, I think it was an amazing experience because I met so many amazing friends, right? I think from that, not just with Ben, but other folks in our circles. Like I spent a lot of time um, at PAX, going to GDC, working and meeting a lot of indie devs that were out there, that entire scene, and it's really spectacular. I mean, especially through the age, like there's tons of C# and .net, and between Monogame and Godot and Unity, and like it's cool to see you know in software development, if you want to, you can build stuff and you can take your skills anywhere. So I really enjoyed it, and I think that was really a unique experience. I'm super glad that I did it. I think that my career, I really enjoyed being flexible and doing different things, not just like from a specific piece of software, but I think from the devices that I'm creating it for, right? I went from creating software for game consoles, and then for desktop PCs and servers, and then I worked on mobile, and I worked on these like units that were in hotel rooms that were very highly custom, where we made the silicon for, and then obviously now to being like a little bit of everything with cloud and server. But I think in those 10 years or so, it was really like exploring new hardware to write code for, and that was really a unique experience. Reflecting on that is, some folks in their careers that I've talked to are like, well, I've done front end web dev for the last 20 years, and which is amazing,
Yeah.
right? But actually, I think looking back, one of the coolest parts of my career has been the the ability and the luxury in some way to explore those different mediums for creating things. I think that's why that exploration to put code on a little IoT device like the Cadence thing, and to put code on a little scrolly thing, or like your lawnmower thing. It's fun with not just hardware, but it's the medium that it's being displayed on. And I think that always has intrigued me, is software running on different form factors. And I think it's when I saw the mobile phones, it really clicked with me of like, oh wow, like there's this medium that's like a powerhouse, a game console, a browser, a app platform, all in one, and that's what intrigued me. So yeah, it was good. I was good, happy.
Really well said. And I lied because now you just made me think of a new one. How long would it take you to vibe code this thing for iOS?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think that I bet that you could have something rudimentary up in a few days.
Yeah. But I think you made a good point. Like, the bugs weren't in the game engine. The bugs were in the level design and all the triggers and all of that. And I'm not sure the vibe coding is going. It was a silly question, but like, I already knew, like, yeah, you can make the engines these days. You can go get Unreal, and they do all the fun, easy stuff for you. So they leave all the hard stuff left for you to do.
Yeah,
It's kind of funny how the
exactly.
world has changed. Well, that's
Totally.
been fun, man.
Well, there you go. Well, there's a little bit of game development knowledge drop for you, and then hopefully this time next week I'll be getting some more hands on with the Switch 2. We'll report back, tell you what I think of it. But that's gonna do it for this week's Merge Conflict. So until next time, I'm James Montemagno.
And I'm Frank Kruger. Thanks for watching and listening.
Peace.